Hey, Doc. Good evening, sir. How are you, man?
Hey, good evening, my friend. Good to be back here, man, talking with you and talking with all of our friends and family members, those who are part of the PRT group. So just good to be back over here, man.
Yes, indeed. Hey, man, I'm excited about our conversation tonight. But just before we hop into that conversation this evening, that's going to be about, I'm not going to tell y'all yet, but it's going but I want to talk about last week, Dr. Henry. Now, last week, I think you were not with us on last week,
I
right?
wasn't there, man. You got to tell me about last week, man. How was last week?
Last week, and I did this last week too. I was sitting here trying to remember that there's so much stuff that happens between our episodes, and life gets so busy and caught up. And I'm like, but Justin Coe was with us last week. If you don't know who Justin Coe is, and you've had your head under a rock, maybe Justin. I'm saying Coe, Justin Coe. Justin is one of the most prolific social media and media experts, evangelists that we have in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And it was so fascinating. This was part 2 of church social media teams, and what's happened. What did we imagine was going to happen when we were in COVID? There was this big rush for everybody when COVID and quarantine hit, for everybody to try to figure out, how do we exist in this space? And we talked about that, what some of the challenges were. Then we moved and we talked about what some of the expectations were coming out of it, and then trying to land on where are we now and what do we need to do. So if you're wondering in your own local church what your media team can do, how to exist effectively in the social media space, in the virtual platforms, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, what's the other ones? Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff, even your website. You need to go and check out last week's episode. And there was some free giveaways that I think are still available. So I want to make sure that you go and check that out. This is a lot of money Justin put on the table to do some coaching and some training, to be part of a master class. So if you want to tip your media guy off, your tech team off, you want to go in and check that out. Let's see real quick who we've got in the chat today.
I see Andrew Brown from Barron Springs, Michigan. Okay, Barron Springs, a familiar place, man.
Yeah.
A familiar place. Listen, if you're watching now, please type your information into the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know your name. This is PRT, the PRT time. By the way, here we're committed to bring you some information that's going to help you in your church, in your ministry. And so that's why we have the PRT program on. Oh, we got a familiar face over here, or
there
a
he
familiar
is.
name over here. Yeah, we know we got to have Rodney. Come on, man. Thank God for Rodney Smith, man. Just pouring into us week after week. Very supportive, powerful ministry. Thank you so much from the bottom of the heart. Oh, he's here. He said, it's beautiful here in Bermuda.
In Bermuda. Bermuda. Good stuff.
Pastor Paul, we should take the show to Bermuda, man. We should go to Bermuda, man.
All right. I hear it's nice over there. Never been.
Right.
Listen, I'm gonna take some coaching notes, man. I mean, some act on some coaching. So we got some coaching from Justin last week, man. And Justin said, and by the way, Anastasia was with us as well last week. I don't want to miss Anastasia. Anastasia did some great stuff. We showed you some clips. You want to make sure that you go and check out Anastasia's online local church ministry for children, and get some ideas of some stuff that you can do in the space. So make sure you go and check out Anastasia's stuff as well. Listen, Justin said, look, you guys take too long to get into your subject, to get into it. So let's get into it, man. Let's hop in.
I do. Well, listen, let's hop in. Let's say share the feed. Can we do that? Is that okay? Share this feed. Please do it. Your comments are vital. Today's discussion is going to be something that's going to be robust. It's going to help you. It's going to help us as we kind of navigate through these waters. Again, thank you. I see my friend Vivian Bryan is on too, all the way from South Florida. All right, listen, today, by the way, we are missing somebody today, Pastor Paul, somebody that's really important. And that is Pastor Roger Wade.
Pastor Roger Wade. He's not with us tonight. Roger Wade is in the beautiful Spice Isles, man.
Right.
Twin Islands, Trinidad and Tobago.
That's right.
Doing some family time, hanging out with Mom. So, Raj, we wish you safe travels, Doc. And we hope you have a good, relaxing time and taking care of Mom and seeing family. And we wish you a speedy return. Listen, today, our topic, man, what are we going to talk about?
Tonight. So, Pastor Paul.
You asked me, what are we going to talk about?
Tonight. What is on the table tonight, man? What are we talking about? Why?
So tonight is going to be a little different, and I'm not even going to play. I'm not even going to. I'm going to just put it straight.
Let's go right at it. Yes.
So we told you on last week that tonight we were going to be dealing with part 2 of the LGBTQ series that we began a couple seasons ago. It was a phenomenal discussion that we had. Our guest host last week did an excellent job. But Latoya Alcide was with us on last week. But she was our guest on the original part 1 of the LGBTQ discussion, and that discussion was so robust that we said we wanted to come back and have that discussion again. Now, here's the rub, is that we did not get all of the guests to be able to be here tonight like we wanted to. So we're going to do something a little different. We're going to touch on that quite a bit, but this is going to be a little different flow in our conversation. We do have a special guest with us that was here to talk about that topic with us, but we're going to put that topic on hold for another time. We'll let you know. But we are going to talk about a number of other things, some of our upcoming part 2s and the Pastors Roundtable. We want to talk about some camp meetings that are going on. And I think one in particular that we've talked about in the background, we want to spend a little time on. But our guest, Dr. Henry, would you introduce our guest for us?
Well, listen, our guest, man, we are so privileged to have him. He is a preacher. He is a musician. And let me tell you something. He's an advocate for justice. Let me tell you something. This man here, look, he has won my heart, his family. When I went up to the Central States Conference, Pastor Josiah, who's our guest today, and his lovely wife, Karen, the children, they treated me, man, like family. I will always be indebted to them. And so I'm here to bring on my friend, my pastor, Pastor Cryston Josiah, my man.
Oh, look at that theme music, that intro music you got coming.
I feel like a celebrity up in here, man.
Yeah. Listen, man, thank you so much for joining us on the Pastors Roundtable. Listen, Pastor Josiah, man, listen, actually, this is your part, but since I'm let me just go ahead and do it. Listen, we didn't give you everything. We didn't talk about everything that you've done, all of your accomplishments and everything. But if you could just share with us, give us you are a preacher, right? So I'm going to give you 35.7 seconds just to talk a little bit about you, what you're doing in the Great Central States Conference. Oh, man. And just go ahead, and this time is yours. 35.73?
35.7. Well, man, listen, man, I'll beat that. I love God and I love people. That's it. I love God and I love people. Of course, you mentioned my wife, Karen. Then we have 4 kids, Nick, Faith, Priscilla, and Lydia. About to be an empty nester. Lydia's about to head to Oakwood in August.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, I look it, but I'm getting up there. Man. And I love serving people, man. Like I said, man, I love what I do. I enjoy serving as the executive secretary, vice president for administration for Central States. But I also love even more being the public affairs and religious liberty director, which means I get to deal with all things conscience and justice related. That's my passion, amongst other things that I do with. Yeah.
So, Cryston, that's a part of your role in the conference, or is that a side thing?
Yes, no, I serve as the pastoral director for
Oh,
the
I can't be
Central States
asking the
Conference.
secretary if that's a side thing. We don't have
No,
side
that ain't
things. That's
side,
not.
man. That's central.
Yeah, I love it.
No,
Good
no, I
stuff.
got some other side stuff now. I'm gonna talk about
Watch it,
that
watch
when I get.
it.
I'm gonna talk about that when I get to Pelt. You know, I know how to monetize my ministry. Come on now.
Yeah,
Okay,
listen,
okay,
this
Yeah.
okay.
is. Let me tell you, man. This guy, Pastor Josiah. I'm telling you. Look, it was a privilege to work with this brother. I'm telling you, this man has a heart for people, a heart for ministry. And Pastor Paul, I followed him in his church. So he was a pastor of
Oh
the church
wow.
that I was pastoring, and I
Mhm.
followed him. And I'm gonna tell you, if you ever want to follow somebody, follow Pastor
Oh,
Josiah, because
no, no,
what
don't
he
Okay.
do that.
does, he supports. I'm gonna say this again. He supports the present pastor. This
Oh, that's
man
powerful.
supports the present pastor, man. He lifts up the hands of the pastor. I mean,
Absolutely.
this is the
No
guy.
doubt.
He can write the book on it, man. So listen, again, praise God you're here,
Amen.
man. Pastors
Amen. Thank you,
Roundtable.
man. Thank you all for having me. Thank you all for having me.
Ah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, good stuff, Doc. Well, listen, man. You talked about that Pearl thing. Let's do that right quick.
Mhm.
Can we start there? You've
Oh
got
yeah.
an event that's coming up. Talk to us about that. What that is. What's going on? When is it? Um, I think we've got a. Do we have a flyer here? I think we've
Yes,
got
sir.
something
Yes,
about that.
sir.
Let's
Thank you
see.
so much, man, for allowing me to share about it. And I can start talking even before you. There it is right there.
There it
10
is.
years, 10 years after Ferguson. Are we
Mm.
walking or talking?
Mm.
And of course, for those who don't know, 2014 was the time that Mike Brown was shot by that police officer. And if you see right on the second row of the screen, his father is going to be with us on our opening
Wow.
night of our
Wow.
convention. It's going to be a powerful, powerful convention, man. We're going to be holding ourselves accountable as a as
Uh-huh.
as a church organization.
Mm-hmm.
What have we done, to lift up the hands of those who have been marginalized and oppressed and downtrodden? Are we keeping it real? Then we have, as you can see, we have some powerful speakers. Pastor Fordham, our good friend who is from the Central States Conference area. He's going to be our main speaker on Sabbath. But there you also see Pastor Daryl Hoy. Some of you
Yes.
are familiar with her. She's also a Central States Conference
Uh-huh.
person who has
Down to
gone on
Southwest now.
missionary tour. Yeah, Southwest now. And then if you see there, Father Flager
What?
from Chicago, man, he's gonna come through um, and have a lot to say on some of the issues of conscience and justice that we deal with as a people, man. So it's going to be a powerful event starting September 19th. There's actually a pre-conference on the 18th for those who want to come in on Wednesday. We're
Okay.
going to do a tour of a Holocaust museum there in St. Louis. And like I said, man, we're gonna deal with all issues justice related, conscience related. It really is there for our people as church family to be educated and energized on those issues, but it's also there for us to kind of mingle with some of the folk in the community. We're going to have a couple of tours in the city with some people who are doing some tremendous work already in St. Louis. And it's only $199. All of this from Thursday
Mm-hmm.
night, Friday, all day on Friday, on Sabbath all day, on Saturday all day, and then on Sunday morning, at $199. Man, you can room with somebody. I told the pastors in St. Louis they can open up their rooms and do some Airbnb work. They can make some money if
All
they
right.
want to, but all roads lead to St. Louis, Missouri, September 19th to 22nd.
Wow, that's good. Hey, Dion, you know what we should have done, man? We should have negotiated like a 15% discount with the PRT discount code when they
Hey,
register. We should have
oh
done
man,
something for hooked our audience
oh
up,
man,
man.
it ain't
So
it ain't too late, man. It ain't too late. Y'all got that
okay,
big
we
money. Y'all got that
well,
big money, man. Come
you
on.
missed that. You missed the integral word or negotiate.
You go.
All right, but listen, yeah, that sounds fascinating, man. I
It's gonna
can
be good.
remember, I remember seeing Father Michael Flager years ago
Uh-huh.
in the down here, Trayvon Martin stuff was
Uh-huh.
going on. He was a very
Yeah,
vocal,
absolutely.
outspoken person, and it took you by surprise. It wasn't, what you saw wasn't necessarily what you expected to
Uh-huh.
hear. And so I'm also noticing, Elder, how
Uh-huh.
diverse this speaker list is. A lot of
Yes,
diversity here. I think that's going
indeed.
to be a word we might talk about in a little bit. Um,
Yes.
Good. All right. Well, listen. As those of you that are watching and joining us tonight, we want you to chime in tonight. So, you've got any questions or any things that you'd like for us to deal with specifically in any of the areas that we're about to get into, we're going to be watching and monitoring very carefully tonight your questions in your chat. So, by all means, if you're watching this on the replay, we invite you still to go ahead and throw some questions and comments in, and we want to do our best to try to even get to those after the live. Listen, Pastor Josiah, it is camp meeting season.
Yes, sir.
We are seeing camp meetings happening, taking place. We in the past we've done, I think almost every year we've done a camp meeting show. It looks like we lost Dr. Henry. He should be back. But we have, there he is. We've done camp meeting editions of the Pastors Roundtable where we take a look at camp meetings all over the country. Last year, we focused on one particular camp meeting where there was
Yes,
some explosive stuff happening.
that's right.
Um, our friend of the PRT, Pastor Wintley
Pastor
Phipps,
Whitley Phipps.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
preached that
Uh-huh.
sermon down in
Powerful.
Southwest region, Athens,
Southwest.
Texas. There,
Yes.
yeah. And so, Dr. Henry, we had a good conversation about that. Do you
Yeah.
remember or recall anything about that?
Oh man, listen, that conversation was, here's the word again, robust, right?
Yeah,
We think we
camp
said
meeting,
it.
man. Camp
Let me
meeting
tell you
does
something.
stuff.
Because camp meeting, you have the audience of people or representatives from churches
Uh-huh.
all over the area, right? So
Uh-huh.
so that camp meeting speaker is, by the way, I was at the Central States camp meeting last week, and my
Uh-huh.
goodness, what a word. Oh my goodness, Paula, that's a
Fire.
preacher right there, right? But so a camp
Who's that?
meeting,
Olivier?
Yes,
yes,
Dr.
yes.
Paul Olivier, man.
I missed it.
No.
Okay.
She's powerful. So at camp meeting, that sermon that you do at camp meeting has the ability to impact a lot of people, not just one church, but many churches, and of course is online. So last year we dealt with Whitley Phipps in his sermon. So he dug in, man. He was digging in. He was talking about things like native born. Americans or people who are native born here, and why the church, what has happened to us in reaching those who were born in this country. And so he went into that, and we
Wow.
had a conversation of that. Then he also went into something else, Anselm, when he talked about the pastors and books and things that we do, and
Yeah.
how there's a movement, for
COI,
those
baby.
for those things to be restricted, and the conference owns it. And
I
Hey,
remember
so,
Kristen and I had some direct
look.
conversations about that conflict of interest stuff.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
so I'll tell you. So camp meeting. So again, when you
Uh-huh.
come to camp meeting, your stuff, man, whatever you say, it's not going to
Uh-huh.
impact just one church, but many churches, and of course,
That's
people are
right.
watching these camp meetings. So this year, I know there's some camp meetings that already took place, right?
Uh-huh.
And so there's we know Central States, I think
South Central is done.
Central. Then you have the 3ABN camp meeting as well, right? So that took place as well, right? And I think they already had a sermon. I wasn't able to listen to it, but my hearing is there's a lot of stuff in the chat going on with what happened at that camp meeting. So I don't
Yes,
know,
sir.
Pastor Josiah, I don't know if you can, kind of comment on some of the things that took place, man, at that camp meeting, and we'll go to some other camp meetings if we can.
Here's
Sure.
a comment. Aaron Smith says, I would want to hear Pastor Phipps' thoughts on Danny Shelton's last sermon. That should be interesting.
Oh,
That was a camp meeting sermon, Pastor Josiah. I
Yes, it
think he's
was.
referring to Danny Shelton's last sermon. Danny Shelton, by the way, I don't know how you call it. Is it the owner or the director of
Yeah.
3ABN? One of
Yeah.
our I don't know how we call it. It's not. Is it? I almost said para church. That's not the right word. Self-supporting,
Yeah.
self-supporting
Self-supporting,
ministries
independent
connected to.
ministry. Uh-huh.
Yes. All right. So let's talk about that, man, because that thing has been making some waves in our social media spaces. And Dion, Dr. Henry, has not heard the sermon. Can you
I've
give
heard
us?
it.
Listen.
Have you heard the sermon, Pastor Josiah?
Oh, yes, sir. Listen to all of it. Yeah,
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
All right.
all of it, man. I didn't know if I was gonna make it through, but I made it through. I
Okay.
made it through, and I must say that I was quite. I think the first thing was shocked. Um,
Mhm.
the appalling stuff came later on. Those feelings came later on, but initially, I was shocked at the beginning because normally, in our church, especially being a 501c3 organization, we encourage to not be political. To stay out of things political, but still follow the word. Preach, be convicted by the word.
Mhm.
We're having a conference on justice. I can cite several scriptures on Old Testament and New Testament on us, speaking up for those who can't speak for themselves, and lifting up those who are oppressed, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes we have been labeled as being political. Matter of fact, I'll cite some things that he said, which points to that. But he went all the way in particular on the sixth and the seventh commandments. He felt like the church was not living up to preaching all of the commandments. And when he locked into the sixth and the seventh commandment, he pretty much was speaking about abortion and the LGBTQ lifestyles, or that push that comes from the left. And so his sermon was shockingly fully political. And I know we'll talk about some more as we go further. But yeah, I think my first initial reaction was that I couldn't believe that I believe he's still a Seventh Day Adventist preacher. I could not believe that he was all the way in pretty much taking a stance and saying that people should support those who are true to all of the commandments, in particular the sixth and the seventh commandment. That's where he kind of
Okay.
dug his heels in, man. I was just in shock about that, man.
So,
Mm.
so let's talk about that real quick now. And we've had shows where we've talked about. I think with PRT, we've had episodes where we have talked about the church and politics and how far should we and can we go. But let's revisit that just a little bit because you brought that up at the beginning. Part of your
Uh-huh.
role as the vice president and secretariat role for a conference is that you handle the legal issues
Indeed.
that organization faces at that level. Talk to us real quick. What are the parameters that the church has when it comes to addressing or talking about politics from the pulpit? Is it that we cannot talk about politics at all? I know that affects some 501c3 status,
Uh-huh.
or is it just certain candidate? How does that work? Talk to us real quick on how that works.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so we're advised by our North American Division General Counsel to be people who are balanced, meaning that we should not push any side, any political agenda. That is not our role as a church, denominationally speaking, but it's also not our role as pastors. I believe when I received that call to stop doing the business thing and to stop, doing all the other crazy things I was doing, man, it was to lift up Jesus.
Yeah.
My calling was to lift up all things, the word related, and if I wanted to go into politics, then I should have done political science, run for office, and so we are allowed to you can bring in candidates but you have to be bound. You have to do both if you're going to do that as a local church. But you are not to push one side or another. And it was just impartiality. Very good, Aaron Smith. Thank you so much. That's the word. But man, it was crazy. It was crazy as I was listening, to this message, which was a Sabbath message, where he was literally using political terminologies, demonizing, one side, of course, which was understandable, and trying to, what I would say, was create false equivalencies, in his narrative, and saying that he was in the middle, and so yeah, our role, is to speak truth to power. Sometimes that could sound political, but it doesn't have to be. You just got to preach the word. If you preach Old Testament and New Testament theology that is based on the lifting up of peoples and genders, and just looking out for the least of these. Matter of fact, Jesus preached a whole sermon in Matthew 25. There are people who are going to be lost because they did nothing for the least of these. Like people will go to hell. I know that doesn't sound popular, but he says, "Depart from me," and you're on the left because you did not. When I was hungry, you did not. When I was thirsty, you did not. When I was in prison, you did not. And so that's not being political.
It sounds like Jesus is saying you should be on the right.
You be on the right side, right, amen. Be on the right hand with the sheep, right.
Oh, the right hand, okay.
Don't be on the left,
not of the aisle, of the hand. Okay, all right.
Hey, come on, preacher.
But
okay.
But now, man, this message, this camp meeting message, and everybody needs to watch it, because let me tell you, I on Thursday, I'm sitting in my office. It's pre-camp meeting. As Pastor Dion said, we're coming off a high with Dr. Paulo Olivier, man, and then Elder Bernard, our president. He preached an ordination message. With power, conviction. I mean, it was just a high weekend. Gave a couple of days off. I get a call on Thursday from one of our members saying, "Have you heard the sermon from 3ABN camp meeting?" And I'm like, "No." I'm trying to come down off of the high that we've had, and the person was like, and this is a person that, elder, someone I respect, good friends of, and they're like, "Now you need to go listen to it. You're not going to, if I told you, you won't believe." Sure enough, when I listened to it, I couldn't believe, couldn't believe, and to his credit, he said it out the gate, I'm going to deal with politics. I'm about politics, and so I got to give him credit for shooting it straight. Now I don't know how that's going to affect his 501c3. I don't know how that's going to affect him down the line, but it appears in this day and age, fellas, that many folk of a different hue than myself are weighing heavily into pushing a certain agenda politically, having a certain presence, in politics and in government, whether it be the state legislature or whether it be in Congress, and they seem to have no issue pushing that agenda with no repercussion. So it's an interesting time in which we live.
It's interesting, Elder, as I got a chance to listen to the sermon as well. I was on the road for 6 hours today, and I was able to
you had time.
And
you had time.
Had time. And it was interesting because it felt like he was making essentially the same point that you just did. It sounded like he was saying, we are finding and hearing so much politics in our pulpits and from our pastors today. And so it sounded like he was saying, and I want to address that. And he started out by saying that, and I'm paraphrasing, that we are hearing so much about diversity, equity, and inclusion in our pulpits, but not the gospel. And again, I'm paraphrasing it. And it was almost as if that was politics, diversity, equity, and inclusion. and yet that there was the other issue that he was saying. We talk about all of these things from one side of the aisle. One side of the aisle kind of pushes those issues, but the other side, the issues that are legitimate, is from his resume, that oftentimes we don't hear much about that. And he was talking
Uh-huh.
specifically about abortion and what our topic was going to be about tonight, um,
Uh-huh.
uh, LGBTQ, and I forget how that goes. TI, is that the
LGBTQ
LGBTQI?
QIA
Like I said, IA, yeah.
plus plus.
That
Uh-huh.
plus.
plus, that's correct. Yes, yes. But that we don't talk about those things coming in. Matter of fact, he made a connection between where on one side we see people looking at the right and Project 2025. And that's another episode we did
Uh-huh.
on
We
Project
did that.
2025. He says
Yeah.
we see people all up in arms and whatnot talking about that and guarding the front door, because our Adventist eschatology suggests that those are going to be some of the things that usher in Sunday laws and time of persecution, et cetera, et cetera. But he said nobody's guarding the back door,
The back door.
and whereas it's the abortion and the LGBT stuff is coming in that side. I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was fascinating that he was. I don't know if he was pitting the two against each other. It sounded like what he was trying to say. No, that's not. What he actually said was, we need to have emphasis on both. That's what he actually said. But it sounded like he was leaning heavily towards one or the other and saying, we've been hearing about Sunday laws and stuff forever. We don't need to worry so much about this stuff. There's all these other things. That was very, very interesting take on that. How would you look at the difference between the issues that both
Uh-huh.
Republicans and Democrats push in regard to how he set it up, the context? These are one side, he said this is a commandment keeping issue, and the other is just kind of
Yeah.
he tried to
Yeah.
say woke. He,
Yeah. No,
Oh
no,
my.
he wouldn't. I don't think he was trying to be balanced at all. So here are the words he used when he started out, because I got a whole page of notes and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He said some people are too immersed in diversity, race, culture, equity, inclusion, and politics. So that's a down. That's a negative, right? He said that there
Mhm.
are churches and whole
Yeah.
conferences, yeah, that preach more about social justice, diversity, equity, inclusion than they preach about the saving power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So you see how he kind of tries to negate the need for preaching the social gospel, almost as if it is something that doesn't need to be done, or is being done more than preaching about the saving power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. But you must preach against the sixth commandment, because you're
The breaking of the
killing
sixth
human,
commandment. Yeah.
the breaking of the sixth commandment, because you're killing humans in the womb, as if they're those of us who can't be morally upright and believe that in keeping all of his commandments, which includes lifting up those who are oppressed. You know what I'm saying? The whole
Yeah.
Sabbath commandment, Isaiah 58, man, is all about lifting up the burdens of
Yeah.
those who, it's like it was unbelievable. That's all I can say. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. And so I looked at it as a false moral equivalency that he was trying to do, where he was trying to say, well, that over there is not necessary, but you really, and even if the person at the top of the ticket, I don't even want to call his name, even if he clasps hands with with those who push the Project 2025, and even if you got us, and then y'all got to watch it for yourself. Then he brings out his family members, and I said no. Then he talked. Dion didn't see it. His pregnant daughter and daughter-in-law, and then goes on to just just marginalize those of us who know that God has called us to champion issues of justice and equality. That's what Jesus did, when he came, and yeah, that marginalizing of the quote unquote for him the left, while championing the need to hold up the commandments of God, with the sixth commandment dealing with abortion, and then the seventh commandment. He doesn't go say much about how you can love, those who are LGBTQIA plus, and how you can accept them without approving of the lifestyle. He doesn't say anything
Mm-hmm.
about how we are to minister. Ellen White's quote, we need to mingle amongst God's children, because everybody that's created, is God's child, even if you don't agree with the choices that they're making. He doesn't say anything about that. He just demonizing and marginalizes. It was just sad. It was just sad to me. And watch this. I'm gonna let you jump. Then he says, left-leaning pastors have turned a blind eye to abortion and same-sex marriage. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Not recognizing that, man, listen, we can preach Christ and minister to everyone. You don't have to turn a blind eye, just because you are caring and compassionate and loving, and trying to minister. That's not turning a blind eye. No. I don't hear any
Mm-hmm.
pastor in our churches who are
Mhm.
not willing to handle the tough topics. Now you might have one or two who are just, very extreme, but yeah, he painted a lot of pictures with broad brushes, man. And it was
Wow.
very unfortunate, man. I was highly disappointed.
I know in many other forums, in this digital space, over the last, I don't know, 6 months or so, we have seen, there's a focus. There was a fear coming out of the last general conference session, actually going back that far, that if the church were going to vote to ordain women, that the next thing that would follow behind, they're going to say, well, we're going to start ordaining women and seeing women pastors. Then in a certain segment of our community, there is this fear then, well, what's next, is if we start ordaining women, the next thing that we're going to start doing is having homosexual clergy, and start ordaining homosexuals. I have never been able to see the connection there.
The connection between that, right?
Because there is none. There is no connection. That's why you can't find it. You can't see it. As a matter of fact, let me read a quick excerpt. I know we're gonna get into this topic at another time, but the Adventist belief on marriage and the family is pretty clear. Created in God's image, male and female, we are designed to live in relationships. Marriage is God's ideal to live in harmony and for children to grow up in security and love. Marriage was divinely established in Eden and affirmed by Jesus to be a lifelong union between a man and a woman in loving companionship. Man, that's clear. It's not nebulous. It's not up to the imagination. And so people who come with that argument of, well, if the Holy Spirit already calls women into ministry and we recognize that call, somehow that's connected to marriage or connected to there's no connection, man.
Here's where, and Aaron asked this question as well. What's the rationale? And Dr. Henry, I'm wondering if you see any light in this too. I know I'm trying to pull Dr. Henry in. So I think that what they are suggesting is that if we put men and women on the same plane as equals, then we are erasing the distinction that exists between men and women. And so this step is just one to the other. Now, I don't agree
Mhm.
with that. I'm just saying I think
Right.
that, and just trying to figure out how they're processing that. Dr. Henry, what as far as is that a huge leap? Is that and I want to get back. I saw
I
Lorna asked a question or
yeah,
made a statement earlier. I want to get back to because I
okay.
thought it was interesting as well. But
Yeah, I don't know if that is the connection that they're making. They might be, right? And I think it's a matter of those individuals that feel that ordaining women is unbiblical, then they're saying that if we do that, it gives room to other unbiblical
okay,
practices.
okay,
That's what I'm thinking, right? So,
Yeah. Mhm.
but it's interesting on that topic, and I know you want to get to Lorna, but it's interesting on that topic. I do know that there are some churches and conferences that are dealing with heavy issues regarding the LGBTQ plus community, right?
yes,
I want to hear
yes.
from the secretary. How do we as a church handle some of these issues, and some of the issues that are out
Mhm.
there. How do we handle it when somebody who is maybe ministering in a church and they are a part of this community? How do we deal with it? What do we do? What's the right thing to do? I don't know, man. This is why you get paid the big dollars, man, so you can handle
Yeah.
these tough
And
issues.
We're,
if I
we're,
if I can, I would just want to sneak Lorna's point in there. She said because we were talking about the thing where he was saying that we don't deal with this, but Lorna's saying, "Yo, for years." She says, I've heard dozens of sermons,
Oh,
seminars, and
lectures, yeah.
discussions from the church about the queer community for decades, and especially now. Um, and she's saying, show me even one sermon about 2025. And I don't know if she's meaning the election or the project 2025 from the GC brethren.
Probably so.
I think she's got a valid point there. We
Mm-hmm.
have talked, the church has talked about these things. So when we talk about it, and then as Dr. Henry was asking, when it
Yeah.
shows up, like what are some of these issues? What are we doing? How do we
How do
deal with
how
it?
do we do it? How do we do it?
yeah, man.
Yeah.
I think, and we can talk about this, more in depth, when you actually deal with
Yeah.
the LGBTQIA
Specifics. Yeah.
specific topic. But man, the NAD put out. I got it right here with me. Guiding
Talk to me.
families.
Yeah.
They put out a whole document to teach us as pastors, as teachers, as leaders, man, how to be more caring and how to be compassionate, how to accept people for who they are without approving, the lifestyle. And for whatever reason, there's some people who look at that as being radical. like,
Mm-hmm.
like how radical is it to love all God's children? How radical is it, for us to be able to even allow into our fellowship? I would tell you something. Maybe I don't know if I told Dion this, but some years ago when I was pastoring Beacon Light, that's the church before that I left, that Dion took it to another level. Amen. I heard somebody said, and they meant to be mean. I was around. They didn't know I was around, and they had told somebody, "Oh, they can go to Josiah's church because they let everybody come." That was the quote. They let it, and I'm in my mind they're saying it as a slight, and I'm like, we sure do. Whosoever will.
Come on, preacher. Yes, sir.
How are we going to minister to people?
Yes.
There is a word. There is a word. How you going to minister to people who are absent? There's a quote real quick from Dr. David Osborne. He said, you have to reach people where they are because you can't reach them where they're not. You get it? I'm going to say it again for the folk in the back. You have to reach people where they are because you can't reach them where they're not. And so the person thought it was a slight. Oh, they can go to Beacon Light, because they let anybody come. Well, that sounds like Jesus to me.
Yeah.
You not
Come
slight
on,
me.
man.
Now, I might not vote them to be an elder.
Sure.
I
Right,
may not
yeah.
vote them
Okay.
to be a leader, but can they fellowship? Can they be a part? As a matter of fact, do you know that according to the manual, you don't even have to be a church member to sing or
Right.
be a part of the choir. I know people of my church
Pathfinders, I
who
think, too.
came in because they were singing in the choir and they kept coming and they ended up joining later on. And so there's certain roles, there's certain functions, there's certain ministries that folk can even be a part of. I'm talking about according to the manual and even according to our policy, NAD policy, that you can participate. You may not be able to lead, but man, I think like the sermon that you heard from 3ABN, if you have it a certain way, you will be preaching fire and brimstone only on a certain group of people, who
Mercy.
also need the love of Jesus and need to experience the love of Jesus, man. And that's why for me, man, it was just, again, shocking and sad. It was shocking and sad, man, to just hear him just kind of wailing, on those two hobby horses, and acknowledging at the beginning, like I said, that hey, today I'm going to deal with politics.
Right.
Yeah, I've never heard. If I tried doing that at one of my churches, and I'm pastoring the church right now, man, if word got out that I did a sermon like that, brother, I'd be looking for a job, and I probably couldn't get one, in any of the 59 conferences in the NAD. I have to go overseas or start an independent ministry or something.
Right.
I couldn't believe it, man.
Hold on. There's 50.
Hold
on 1 second. There's 59 conferences in the NAD.
In the North American
59.
Division. Yes, sir.
Okay, so Pastor, I know you're going to say something, but I just want to say,
Go ahead.
Do you think it's the time to restructure our church?
Oh, wow.
I mean, I'm hearing that.
Okay.
I know.
Yeah,
okay, I'm gonna come back. But I'm just, you're the secretary, man. You're the secretary. We got the secretary on today. Look, 59. Do you think
That's
it's
because
time?
he didn't hear the sermon. That's why.
That's why I cannot hear the sermon. But listen. We have a conference right now, and that's pretty much known. I won't say the name. Where they have to lay off 30-something people or so, right?
35.
35, right? And it's we don't know what's happening, what's going to happen over there, and so maybe there's some talk about merging or whatever. Is it a time to restructure? And then we'll come back to the sermon I didn't hear. Okay, but
Sure.
It's a time for us just to look at it, Pastor. Just to look at it. Yeah,
man, it's we had a whole when I served on the NAD executive committee, we had a whole series of committee meetings where we talked about governance and structure. And Central States Conference, our conference territory, we cover our entire union.
Yeah.
So there are 5 other conferences within the very territory, of course, as a regional conference. We cover a region.
Right.
It makes sense. Why they could just let us just cover the area, man. Send us their time. We'll make sure that the pastors get paid. Our offices lean because we believe in pouring the money back into the local church.
Right.
And so we've got the officers and of course a couple folk in treasury, and our departmental administrative assistant, HR. But other than that, our stewardship director is a pastor. Our ministerial director is a pastor. Our publishing director is a pastor. Our prayer ministries coordinator is a pastor. I'm the pastoral director, so I'm wearing 2 hats, and I also work with communications. Our communications director is a pastor. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do to pour money back into the field and have a lean staff at the office, pretty much for legal purposes, run payroll. Now, those kind of things. But man, to answer your question, yes,
Elder, when you say is a pastor, do you mean that they were pastoring a church, or that they are currently pastoring a church and doing the?
Yes, our ministerial director currently pastors a church. Our communications director currently pastors a church. Our stewardship director and ACS director currently pastors a church. You do what you got to do, when you're a small conference. But I think it's an example, I believe, to other
Okay.
larger conferences who have big money that, listen, man, you can get lean and pour your funds back into your pastors, man, and give them the raises that they deserve and the benefits. We still keep our health insurance low and we offer an incentive if they exercise. We give them 50% back. I'm just little things that you can do, to pour into your workers, man.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah,
All
that's a
right.
short answer.
Well, he answered
Well,
it.
yeah, I believe that was the Oregon conference, wasn't it? That was because they put that
Yes,
out.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
They put
yeah.
Yes.
that out
Yes.
in
And
the
and
space. I
and
don't think
and
that's
to
a
their
secret.
and to their credit, though, some of it was, retirement. They use attrition, so you retire, but you don't bring somebody in. But some of it was, allowing other pastors to take calls and, to other places, as well. But
Mhm.
that's the reality, man. That's the reality, especially if you're trying to keep up with the cost of living, the cost of inflation, and you're trying to make sure your pastors and your teachers have a good, livable wage, to keep that up. Sometimes it does cost, but yeah, folk got to learn to get lean, man. And if they want to do away with those other conferences and just make them all regional, I'll put that out there into the atmosphere. Because we're efficient. You can be efficient and effective.
Yeah.
So listen, I want to hop back real quick,
Yeah.
Kristen, into that. There was a point, and I had it in my head a minute ago, but there was a point
Mhm.
early in that camp meeting sermon, um, where the speaker, you see what I'm doing there, where the where the speaker brought out the idea that the issue, and I want to come and going back to your hobby horse and your passion in that
Mhm.
conscience and justice piece, religious liberty piece, that one side of the Adventist church, liberal side of an Adventist church, liberal politically, would suggest that there's this danger of this merger between church and state, and he used the thing about legislating morality. So that's
Mm.
been a big thing of the Adventist church, is that whenever Congress gets together and we push like the moral majority that was happening, and there seemed like from the right there was a push to put uh, godly politicians in office
Mhm.
because we believed, or that section of society believed, that the Christian right in America believed that if you put Christian politicians in, that when they got in office, they would make moral laws. And that
Mhm.
Adventists
Mhm.
have always been kind of that's scary, because when we do prophecy, we talk about
Mhm.
there's going to be a time when those who think they are doing God a service are going to put you to death. In other words, they're going
Right.
to pass laws that look like they are Christian on the outside, and they will
Mhm.
force you to believe. So he said that the speaker says, you remember, you know where I'm going.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's
I'm
like,
about to. I'm about
I
to give you the quote too.
believe in. Okay, good. You'll say it with, but I'll set it up. I believe that. He said, I do not want to live in a country that does not legislate morality. That
He
was
said
almost
that.
the quote verbatim.
Yes.
Some people don't want to live in a country that legislates morality. He says, I don't want to live in a country that does not legislate morality. And he
Mhm.
makes the distinction between in other words, and in the platform of morality, or the basis of it, is the Ten Commandments. So he says the first four commandments deal with or man's relationship with God. The last six commandments deal with man's relationship with man. And so he believes that it's okay. He wants the Congress and whatever to make laws based on the last six.
6.
Don't touch the
Mhm.
first four, so you can do that. And I thought, I was like, well, you know what? He's actually right. We do say it's wrong to kill. We do say it's wrong to steal, and there are legal repercussions. And generally, nobody throws up their arms and says, "Nah, government should not make any laws based on morality because then they are legislating morality." So,
Uh-huh.
how did you process his treatment of that particular issue?
So I used shock and saddened earlier, but I'm gonna use another S word. He was slick, man. That was slick, man. That was slick. So so good luck in pushing a moral legislation, right? Moral legislation for 6 and think that they're going to stop, at 6. Matter of fact,
But we are. But
so
his
I
point is, we already have. He says every nation on the earth has
yeah,
legislated morality, killing,
in
stealing, rape.
well,
All
civil,
those kind of things.
right? Civil, and
He
you try to
threw
have
he
a
threw
civil
you said
society.
he threw pedophilia in there
Yeah, yeah.
to
But
the
he
fear
did, he did.
piece.
But watch this. Committing adultery is breaking God's commandments, right?
Yeah.
So he only highlighted committing adultery when it came to the LGBTQIA community.
Oh
He
mercy!
what about what? See, he didn't. Okay,
Wow.
you see how that works.
Yeah.
You don't get to cherry pick
Wow.
the commandment. Well, we gotta hold up the 6th commandment and thou shalt not kill with abortion. And we gotta preach the 7th commandment. So some people will be locked up if
For committing adultery with a hetero partner. Yeah.
Come on now, come on.
Yeah.
He didn't go there. Very
Oh
slick.
my.
As a matter
Oh my.
I can say a lot about that, but I'm gonna leave that alone. But in 2020, the Project 2025, as our Conscience and Justice Council have reviewed that. Some of our attorneys that are part of that group, and some of our PAW directors in that Project 2025, there is a rest. I don't. It's not
Provision.
legislation provision. That's a part of that. Does he think that they're going to just stop at the last 6 for civil reasons, and not go there at some point in time? That's slick. It was slick. And I got to give him credit for trying to skate that line, but that's when you got to have shows like this where we can call people, and hold them accountable for what they trying to say, man. You got to call
I'm
them
not
out,
talking
man.
to you.
Oh, good. Listen, and let me add this real quick.
She knows who I'm talking to.
So listen, man. Not only was it slick, I don't think it was being genuine. I don't think he was being real, because I think, Aston, you and I mentioned it briefly pre-show. Thou shalt not bear false witness is also a part of the last 6.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a former president that engages in falsehoods, that he was like, well, if he does this, you got to stick with, you got to be, anti-abortion. You got to push back against those left-leaning LGBTQIA, people, and yeah, but if you're gonna legislate morality, then that should disqualify the Republican candidate for president.
But again, it's hard. It is impossible to make the case that we do not already legislate morality, right? We do.
We do to protect the society.
Yeah,
that is the truth. Yeah. That's why I said it was slick, because he wasn't wrong, but he was slick.
So here's the other thing. So what we mentioned before the show, it is that one of the things that he decried was the emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? But when you think about diversity, equity, inclusion, and saying and he's saying that's a political issue, whereas the abortion and the other abortion and the LGBTQ thing was a
moral.
moral issue. So
More
we need
is
to talk
more.
about moral issues, but this was a political issue. And I'm sitting here thinking,
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men
Oh
are
man,
created equal and that they are
equal.
endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights." And we're talking about this equality. And yet, when you have a government and a system and an environment that does not uphold those things, that isn't that breaking the ninth commandment? Thou shalt not bear false witness.
Faultless. Come
So
on, Doc.
when you deal with diversity, equity, and inclusion, aren't you also addressing a part of the Ten Commandments, saying that this
Mm-hmm.
nation who said that we are going to protect the rights of everybody, that we are going to look at everybody as equal, aren't you also dealing with not a political issue? If you want to do that,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a
Mm-hmm.
political issue, then it's a moral issue.
Come on
And
now.
I just thought it
Yeah,
was
it's
yeah,
yeah,
contradictory to
very contradictory. And here's what he said. I have it in quotes here. Divisive weapons such as race,
mm,
culture, and politics. Divisive weapons. How is
Okay,
race
talk to
divisive?
me.
How is my race a divisive weapon? I was born I was born black. How is race divisive? How
but
is
elder
having a conversation
but elder, we're
about
colorblind. We
race?
can't tell that you're black. We don't know that.
Man, listen, man.
We
You
know.
know,
I'm
We
sorry.
know.
I'm
listen.
Come
sorry.
on.
I
We
shouldn't
I,
have
are.
said that.
I could not believe what I was hearing, gentlemen. I ain't gonna lie, man.
Yeah.
Not a camp meeting sermon, you know. And folk in
Yeah.
there saying amen, and the camera panning, and him touting the diversity of his audience. It hurt my heart, man. It hurt my heart.
Rodney
But,
says, Kristen, he's talking to you. He says you were,
oh
I think he means happy for Obama, but said nothing when he gave us same sex marriage. Shame on
nah, we
you,
call. Nah,
Pastor
hey, listen, man.
Josiah.
For those who went to my churches, we called it the way we saw it, man. We called it the way we saw it, man. We
Oh,
called
so
sin
look at
by its
that,
right
Rodney. It
name, man.
wasn't it wasn't every pastor. Look at
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Not even every conference official.
Rodney need to come on by. He need to come by Central States, man.
Yeah.
He need
He
to come
could
by
have come.
Central.
He could
Hey,
have
man,
come by my church when I was pastoring
but
in Tampa. We same thing.
listen,
We
man.
called it out.
We preach truth to power, no matter, and see that was the part that hurt when I was listening today, to Shelter's message. It's the broad strokes, you know. But when you say that all of these left-leaning pastors and all of these churches, and he even said whole conferences preach more
Yeah.
about diversity, equity, and inclusion and social justice than they preach about the saving power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Where, like, which conference have you not heard, the gospel of
Yeah.
Jesus Christ being preached, or issues of justice being preached more than the saving power of Jesus Christ? Yeah, it's just false. My good friend, rest in peace, Dwayne Thomas, man, he used to say it all the time.
Hmm.
Don't let people set up straw men and have you arguing against their straw man.
Yeah.
Pull down the straw man.
Come on,
and
preacher.
And
I love
here's
that.
the
Pull it down.
here's
Pull
the
it
other
down.
straw
Yes,
man
sir.
pull them down.
in this particular conversation. So
Uh-huh.
people have brought up, as was brought up in the sermon, the issue of gay marriage. Gay
Uh-huh.
marriage is not the breaking of the seventh commandment. Gay existence, if he's making it part of the seventh commandment,
Uh-huh.
it's the
Uh-huh.
fact that
Uh-huh.
it exists. Whether you're married or not is not the issue. The behavior is the issue, whether it
Uh-huh.
is sanctioned by the government or not. So if you were going to make a fuss over it, the issue would not be whether or not the government makes a law to sanction the marriage of gay people. It would seem
Uh-huh.
that the argument would be, why aren't we trying to make a law to make homosexuality, period, illegal?
Uh-huh.
It seems
Uh-huh.
like you want to be
Now,
consistent with the argument. Then
right,
that's the issue that you would have been making the issue over
right,
that,
Yeah.
rather than just the issue of the government recognizing some legal
That's true.
relationships, some
Yeah.
property, and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff that marriage affords in
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah, that
So
that's real. That's real. But because that homosexuality was illegal on many of the books
Oh,
in
yes.
legislations around the country of the 50 states.
the
And so
behavior,
the practice, the
yes,
behavior, right, right,
yeah,
right, right, right. Before even you get to marriage or even um uh I forgot the other term where
sodomy,
they
the
can
yeah, yeah,
legally, yeah, yeah, yeah. But no, you know, it was just, man, it was just it was just
Wow.
bad. Listen, I just want to encourage everybody to not take my word for it. Don't take Pastor Anslim's word for it. The same way that member, that good, faithful leader in our conference, she sent me
Link.
that video link.
Oh,
Everybody needs to go watch it for you. You're not gonna be. I'm trying to tell you. When she
okay,
was talking to me, I was like, "It's not possible. No, no, there's no way. No, that's not in keeping with what we do as preachers of remnant preachers." And it was, man, it was like being at a political rally. That's what it felt like to me.
yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
It
I'm going to push back a little bit on
Wow.
that, Kristen, because of this. I have heard from some of our own pulpits that
mhm.
had nowhere on the other side of opposite of what you would hear at a 3ABN.
Okay,
Stuff that was just as much, just as political.
really political.
We get up in pulpits, and even I've done it, where we
Uh,
the other week I was preaching a sermon about Nebuchadnezzar and his egotism and his all that kind of stuff, and I say, in Nebuchadnezzar, we do stuff like that, and we
that's not being
constantly
political.
make. Well, I'm
That's
talking specifically about the issues that I had with a political candidate, right? And more than talking about political issues, our IRS system is
right,
built around our supposedly inability. What we're not supposed to do is
right,
to
right.
cast our support or what's a campaign on behalf of any one
Yeah,
particular candidate. We do it
yeah,
Okay.
all the time, or
yeah.
any
But
particular party. So
But
we
but
will
we
get
are
in our pulpits and we will dog the heck out of the Republicans
can
and the right, and sometimes we will do it directly and call them by name. Other times we're
right,
real
right.
subtle with it.
Can
And
I push
so I'm
forward?
like, if we're gonna
You
be
pushing
real
back,
with
but
it, we
listen, you pushing back. But can I push forward? Can I push
oh
forward
my.
for a minute? It's, I'm gonna push forward. It's political if you are trying to create a narrative that's not there. So when I preached about King,
it's
watch it, the Pharaoh of Egypt, who said that the people of Israel were mightier and more, to create the narrative that they needed to kill all of the Hebrew babies that were under 3. When I don't know if he was president or if it was former President Trump, but whatever it was,
yeah.
whatever statements that he has made, pushing a mindset of Hitler, right?
Mm,
Where
mm,
you can line up his
mm.
statement with 1933. That's not being political. That's just preaching present truth. So
I like it.
but now if I
Yeah,
say don't vote for him because of that, that's one thing. If I say, vote for Biden because of, that's being, and there's some people
yeah,
who are doing it.
yeah,
But what I'm
yeah,
saying is, when the person themselves makes statements, to me it's fair. You got to preach it, doc.
yeah.
Now you can
And
decide
listen,
not to call the name.
though I
That's just me.
believe that as we go forward, those are some lines
Uh-huh.
that prophetic preaching.
Prophetic
Um,
preaching. Yeah, yeah,
Prophetic
yeah.
preaching is going to have to
Mm-hmm.
come to grips with in
Uh-huh.
figuring out Are we going to tell the truth? Are we
Right.
going to do
Right.
what needs to be done to prepare people for stuff that is coming and that is on the horizon? Are we going to do it for fear of or in the face of? And
In
that's
the
some
face.
stuff
Right.
that we've got to work out.
You gotta
You
work
got
it
to
out.
have a Nathan that's going to take his bony prophetic finger and put it in the face
Mm-hmm.
of the king and say, "Thou art the man."
Thou art the
That's
man.
gonna happen. Okay, but we've got 7 minutes left. Let's do this. So here's this rift. Deanna, I see your mouth moving and we can't hear you. I don't know if you're talking to us. You're muted. Okay, he's working on that. So Elder, it
Uh-huh.
seems like there's a gulf and there's a rift that is either been exposed or that is growing within the Seventh-day Adventist Church over issues like what we just with this sermon that we saw. And we could
Uh-huh.
probably find another many sermons that seem to be as polarizing or so in
Uh-huh.
7 minutes, 6 minutes, what do we do? This is a church that God has said, every nation, every kindred, every tongue, every people. How do we pull people together? I did a post the other day about something about the worship wars, something I forget exactly what I called it, but something about worship, the differences in our worship, and I pointed to the fact that that the drum wars. People have these issues over drums in churches, and I know it's 2024, but it still exists. Um, and so many times we look at that as being emotive worship and rhythm in worship and as being a black thing, and we've been taught that, but the history says no, it's not. That drums in worship as far back as 3000 BC, we find it in places like India, in Asia, in South America, North America. We find it in Western Europe among the Celts, among the Vikings. No matter what culture you were, you found rhythm and that in worship. So that is not something that is based on the color of somebody's skin or their ethnicity or nation. That's something that was connected to, at least the history would suggest, that it's connected to everybody. We've all had some of that, and yet we often here in the United States, we use those things as a medium to divide us when historically it was. How do we pull, and I'm not trying to make this conversation about drums, how do we
I got you.
pull together in a time like this? We believe that Jesus is coming again, that it's sooner now, that it's closer now. Some of these things that we're seeing with Christian nationalism, all that, for some of us believe it's even propelling us even closer. And if there's ever a time that we be needing to be pulling together, Ellen White says, the angel said, press together, press
Uh-huh.
together, press
Uh-huh.
together.
Uh-huh.
How do we do that when it seems like everything is tearing us apart, tearing us apart? What do we need to do?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. That's a good question. Man, I think we need to lock into what our mission is.
Hmm.
And if you're asking that about Christianity in general, that is lifting up Christ and Him crucified. If you're talking about Adventism and our role, how do we press together? Man, I think that we gotta stay true to the word. I think what you see is people pulling in different directions because for them the word may be offensive or it may not be
Hmm.
popular. I've heard people say, "Man, you can't preach all that Jesus. The church is getting soft."
Testing 1, 2, 3.
And we're yeah, we hear you, Dion, now.
Okay, good. All
And yeah, and we're not, you know, we're not being as distinctive, with issues of worship and jewelry. And I had a whole conversation yesterday, man, just about jewelry with our pastors, online. Not our
Hmm.
Central State pastors, but online. I mean, I'm like, can we get back to saving souls and being true to the word? And I think that, you know unfortunately, there will be a shaking. I don't. You're not going to get around.
Hmm.
As God's people, the ecclesia, the last day remnant church. I'm not talking about those who are on E-Adventists and those who are in membership. I'm talking about the ones who are in the Lamb's Book of Life.
Yes,
They
sir.
will pull together. But clearly Jesus says to folk, I never knew you. Depart from me. There's going to be a sifting, Paul says. There's going to be a falling away, Paul says. So I think while there is a pulling together of those who are under the blood of Prince Emmanuel and those who are true, to the gospel, I think there are going to be others who are going to be deceived. And there was some deception going on. The chat mentioned, why are we talking about this message and haven't reached out to him personally? I don't know him personally, but it's a public message. It was a YouTube, it was a broadcast. We're not saying that, that he's not going to make it into the kingdom. We're just discussing how problematic and how political he admitted he was going to be. That's rare in Adventist preaching. You don't normally hear somebody say, today I'm going to talk about politics, and then actually talk about politics. That's a rarity. So no, I don't think I've ever met him. I don't know him personally. I don't think we've disparaged him as a person. He's still, a person who can be, of course, saved by the same blood that saves us. But I think when you have a public forum such as that, I think having a discussion about it, I think is warranted, and I think is within reason.
Hey, I wonder if we can.
And you know what?
That might be.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah,
I think it would be a good thing for to have some type of public forum. Not to say public forum, but like a platform like this to talk about these messages. We brought in Whitley Phipps, and we were able to talk with him a little bit more, and it would be great to bring in Pastor Shelton and talk about his message a little bit more. And, one of the things, I know our time is running down. And again, I did not hear the message, right? So I'm listening like everybody else. I should have put some stuff in the chat, man, about what's going on. But here's something that I want us just to think about. I know time is running down. We talk about politics in a negative light, right? And I think we do that because of the tone that brings. But is it? Can we talk about issues though of politics in the pulpit? I mean, Ellen White, she says vote, for this. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we need to talk about that a little bit more. I mean, there's some issues that are on the ballot. Can we talk strongly about? We're not talking about a party, we're not. But we're saying that are there issues on the ballot? Are there things that we need to talk about as pastors to let the people know that these things will impact our freedom? Can we do that? What did our pioneers do? What did they do when it came to issues of that day? Can we follow them, or maybe we're doing something different? I don't know, Pastor Josiah. A few seconds. Let us know about that.
Listen, man, I know that my good friend Edward Woods III made a statement some time ago where he said that our pioneers were more powerful in taking stances even against the government. They were more powerful in their death than some of our leaders are in their lives. And they took stands. They were anti-abolitionists. I mean they were abolitionists. They were anti-slavery. Yeah, they were abolitionists, man. They supported the Underground Railroad. Ellen White made statements. James White made statements about even, going against the civil laws, legislation, to take stands, man. And so
temperance laws.
Yeah, man. Listen, man. We
even on the Sabbath.
She said, even if it's on the Sabbath.
Even if it's on the Sabbath.
On that temperance.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. So I think we gotta be willing to take stands. You can't back down on it. And if he felt like he was taking a stand because of the 6th and the 7th commandment, which was the essence of his message, that's on him. That's between him and God. But quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, Danny Shelton, we would love to have you if you, by any chance, end up watching this. We'd love to have you come on and share with us a bit. We would give you that opportunity. It would be an honor for us to be able to have you on. I have met Danny before. I have interacted with him. He has been gracious. He took me on a little tour of the place, drove me around, all of that stuff. So I that was because I would just happen to be there, not because he invited me personally. I was somebody's driver.
Anselm is the man. Anselm is the man.
No.
You're the man, Doc.
No. But I was actually on one of his shows. I got to take a turkey out of the oven, and that was my 15 seconds.
Oh, come on now, preacher.
Vegan, vegetarian turkey. Anyway, it is. I would love to hear and be able to ask some of these direct questions and give him an opportunity to share from his perspective. I think that would be fair. But in any case, listen, Pastor Josiah, man, thank you for coming and hanging out with these two brothers tonight. We know that we didn't get into our main issue, which we wanted to tonight, which was the entire conversation on LGBTQ TIA+. I don't know if I said it right. But we do, to our audience, we do plan to have that conversation with our full host and guest staff. So keep an ear to the ground for that. We are going to come back and revisit that conversation. I think that the 3ABN camp meeting has given some fresh air or some new air to that conversation. It is one that we want to have because there are issues that our kids are facing in not just public schools, but even in our church schools. How do we deal with that? What do we do? Are our teachers equipped to deal with? Or do we have counselors in our schools? We find suicide rates highest in that age group among those who are grappling and wrestling with their sexuality. The impressions from society, the impact that it's having there is something that is real. We've got church members and parents that are trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I handle this? Churches and conferences, like we talked about earlier. So we want to have that discussion. We'd like to invite you back for that discussion, Pastor Josiah. And so we appreciate you coming and hanging out with us today. Dr. Henry, you want to take us out, man?
Let's take us out. Listen, thank you so much for, first of all, Pastor Josiah, my friend, thank you so much for your presence here tonight. Every time we speak with you, we get fired up, man, because, you're a person that you're knowledgeable, passionate, and that's the type of thing that we need, especially as we have these conversations, so that we could, you're pushing us, man, to learn a little bit more about these issues, man, and
push forward, man. Don't push back. Push forward.
Push forward. Push back. Right.
Got that from one of our pastors, Pastor Brandon Williams. I got to give a shout out to him on that one.
All right. Well, listen, we thank our audience too for joining us here on the Pastors Roundtable, where we make ministry relevant.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading comments. Resourced.
And real. God bless.
God bless everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you next week.
All right. You too.
I got to look for the outro screen. There it is. Good night, everybody.